Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection with the Weekly Comic Book Roundup. We're going to get things started with this week's X-Men books, Avengers books, and Spider-Man related books. Which, in all honesty, this week's Spider-Man books also kind of help pave the way for the upcoming event, The King in Black. So we'll get started with the the first new chapter of Ten of Swords to be released this week. Chapter 17 in X-Force number 14. Surprisingly, this doesn't continue directly, kind of does, but whereas the last month's issues of Wolverine and X-Force felt like just one double-sized issue, these two actually don't. So we begin in the Floating Gardens of Rome and Regina. Saturn has just informed Magic and Pog that a gauntlet of battles await, and that they're to fight each other once again, unarmed. And so Pog picks up Magic and swallows her whole. And she explains that she's being swallowed by him, that she's learned something. The word Pog means sword in Iraqi, she thinks. The alligator suit is one big sword. And, yeah. Magic beats his Pog's true form after ripping it out of the alligator suit. We don't see the full fights, but we do see the point totals. Arakko 6, Krakoa 3, Arakko 7, Krakoa 3, Arakko 8, Krakoa 3, Arakko 8, Krakoa 4. There is a breakdown at the end of the issue explaining what all went down. Arakko 9, Krakoa 4. Yes, all manner of puzzle making, eating, modeling, a scavenger hunt, a race through the crooked market with Saturn. Before the race begins, Saturnine finds Captain Avalon, calls him Captain Britain, and tells him the title is his now. The title he covets is his. He tells her to stay away from him. She claims that he'll come around eventually, and if sympathy doesn't work, fury will. The race is to be between Red Root and Captain Avalon through the Crooked Market, and Jim Jaspers explains that you can find anything in the Crooked Market if you look hard enough, even a finish line. In the middle of the race, however, Captain Avalon is attacked by 3 drones who flanked Saturnine earlier, causing Red Root to pass him, and while doing so, knock over a crystal vase. Jaspers notes that everything in the market there's a cost for everything in the market. Everything. And so Red Root is explaining that Red Root wins. Horribly out of breath, but Jaspers explains that there is the matter of his debt. Having shattered a rare crystal idol of bamboo, crafted from the salt of an Ubagonian princess's tears. And that it was priceless. And so Red Root is put into a capturing jar. And Captain Avalon is told that the same fate that Redroot faces will be his unless he asks Saturnine for her help. We then get a prose section, which is covering the first handful of fights, with notes from as they were sent to Mojo, including Mojo's notes to the side. Next, Wolverine and White Sword will observe the faces of those that they have killed. The first to look away loses. Magic gets a riddle contest. Please spell your answer. A white rabbit pulled out of a black top hat and a spell cast by Wizard and the very life force of Saturnine. What am I? Magic claims that's an easy one. Magic is spelled M-A-G-I-K. However, that is incorrect. Next we have Wolverine, Gorgon, and Magic on a beach. Captain Avalon and War being told by Merlin they must kill a kitten. And then we also learned just what was in the what it was that Wolverine and Storm were drinking. And Storm must now fight with death in Symbiote, the realm of the undead. And so Death and Storm fight, and Storm notes that her powers are gone, which is because of the wine, which we learn is Blight Swill from Blight Spoke. Wolverine is also dealing with similar things. And as the fight goes on, Storm manages to shatter Death's sword, so Death decides to remove his mask. However, Storm looks away and holds her blade and forces Death to gaze upon his own face and then guts him. As the denizens of Symbiote have a taste. The issue ends with a quote from Solom. One day, whatever you own will belong to someone else. Whatever you build will be broken. Whatever you love will die. So today you might as well lie and screw and steal and murder and scream with abandon, don't you think? Because tomorrow knows no mercy. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to Chapter 18 in Hellions number 6. Where we left off in Hellions, Mr. Sinister had volunteered to lead the Hellions into Otherworld with the idea being they would make their way to Araco and steal the swords of the sword bearers. Clearly, they have failed. So we begin with a quote from the character Karn the Uncaring. I do not scorn your fear nor condemn your hatred. These show your heart has wisdom. We come to end you. At the Dryador Gate in Araco, the Hellions step through, looking very much worse for the wear. They're a bit leaner as they were taking the scenic route. Havoc has apparently lost an eye. and they are discovered by none other than Tarn the Uncaring. Qui-Gon explains to Tarn why it is what they're doing there. They're here to steal the 10 Swords of Araco. And Tarn explains that the 10 Swords are another world, being wielded by their champions in a contest that is well underway. There's some argument with Sinister because that he claimed at one point that they weren't lost. Nanny suggests that maybe Empath should allow Scalp Hunter to deal with Scorpion. And then we learn what the real reason that Sinister wanted to come to Araco was. To collect the true treasure, the genes of its mutants. And so Sinister and Tarn talk, and Tarn summons forth the Locust Vial, the sin-blooded scourge of Amenth. We get a quick rundown of them. You have the Genomic Mage, Tarn the Uncaring. Then you have Mother Rapture, Tamer of the Bladefish, Hex Butcher, fast and strong, must eat for all things he must eat. Sick Bird, brittle bones made with tentacles of marrow and nerves, spine spikes bring sepsis and mock coagulation, worming their way into your spine, evading the sacred cord. She finds communion, knowing the whole of you. Mudgear the Recanter, the tumored one, and Amino Fetus, who must not eat. So the Hellions take on. Well, first, Sinister is enamored of the Locust Vial. But Sinister pulls out a box of genetic collection drones and sends them after the Locust Vial. Nanny is seemingly killed by Mudgear the Recanter. Though Orphan Maker does his best to take them down. Hex Butcher, while Havoc charges up, Hex Butcher removes Havoc's hands. At about this point up, Scalp Hunter manages to get Hex Butcher off of him, but is promptly attacked as well by Sick Bird. Though Wild Child and Qui-Gon then join in the fray against her, as does with Orphan Maker also getting in on it. Amino Fetus picks up, seemingly rips Orphan Maker in two, and is actually about to eat the remain. Oh, he rips his arms off, and is going to try to eat Orphan Maker. And so he hands the box. Once the drones return, he hands the box of them to Qui-Gon. Explains that they must get back to Krakoa. And we find out more about the deal the two of them have. He tells her to take care of this package, and he will continue to take care of hers. So Qui-Gon tasks Wild Child with buying them some time. And Qui-Gon takes Havoc and Scalp Hunter through the gate. And Tarn the Uncaring goes after Sinister. They make their way through the Drydoor Gate, brings them to Avalon, on the court of King Jaime, where some of the guards find the trio, but are stopped from actually, doing anything by Empath. There's also a prose portion about things happening in Drydoor and Araco, which we'll get to on Monday. Scalp Hunter thanks Empath and, acts as though this mind control is still in effect before gutting Empath and basically leaving him alive, however, and saying, literally pick up your guts and get going. Crawl through the gate. And so once Scalp Hunter, or Grey Crow, Havoc, and Qui-Gon arrive on Return to Krakoa, they get caught up in a sudden cloud of darkness, and the three are all killed by Sinister. Qui-Gon is run through by him. Havoc is shot in the head by him. And he uses his kill switch on Grey Crow. And then Empath manages to crawl through before dying on this side. And Sinister, saying that things have gone horribly wrong. This Hellions, they're dead. Which is where the issue ends, bringing us to part 19. In the pages of Cable number 6. I actually kind of want to look back and see if maybe there's kind of a mirror to thing to parts 2 through 10 and parts 12 through 21. I think they are mirrored. Anyway. So we begin with this quote from Cyclops. "The future will come fast enough, son. There's no reason to rush it." And we begin with the Quiet Council. They're waiting to hear from Sinister. Nightcrawler, of all people, is getting impatient. Kate makes a comment that if this was a Guns N' Roses show, Axl Rose would have gone on by now. But he explains that he had to, get a new cape. Xavier tries to get in touch with Jean to bring her to summon her to the council. Though he does suggest maybe that perhaps the war captains should be present for this discussion. Though Magneto disagrees, explaining he'd like to hear from Sinister before matters escalate. Kate actually calls Sinister out on, the fact that, there are people who are in a death match with swords. His team was wiped out, and Sinister stopped for a cape. And honestly, Sinister gets one of his best bits of dialogue in the last ever. Excuse me, before Emma took pity on you, you looked like you were dressing yourself with the remainders from the Xavier School's Lost and Found box. So I don't think I'll take my fashion sass from you. And Emma regrettably seconds that motion. But Sinister does explain that the Council was quite correct in forbidding anyone else going over there. The Maniacs have been at war for thousands of years. The Iraqi have been at war for thousands of years. Saying that the Council should see what the Iraqi did to the poor fish people, and it's probably but then adding that they probably don't want to see it. He then explains that nobody who went over there swinging a sword over their head is coming back. They're already short a few council members, but they have a much more immediate problem. Once the Iraqi mutants chew through Saturn and another world, they're going to come to Krakoa. They should blow up the gate and prepare to be invaded. And Xavier explains that via Krakoa, harming the gate is not currently an option. Sinister leaves the council simply saying that hoping the external gate will hold is a mistake that could cost them everything. In Otherworld and Dryador, we get the handful of contests, all in one place. First, Cable versus Blade the Blood Moon. Cable thinks to himself, all he wanted to do was make his dad proud, but there's a bit more than Summers family pride going through him, riding on him this morning. The fact that Blade the Blood Moon is fast and strong and good, but she's not as good as him. He's about to kill her, but he doesn't want to step between Bay and, her husband, Cypher. And so he hesitates. Gets knocked down himself. Bay does start to defeat him. And actually breaks his arm and is about to kill him when Cypher steps in, saying, hey, the kid's beat. Saturnine says that she declared the fight to be to the death, but then adds that some deaths are of the spirit. And grants Arako the point, putting the score at 18-6. She manages to get in touch with, Cable manages to get in touch with Jean, explaining what's happened. And what is happening. And also just going to explain, he can't remember the name of Bay, but it's Doug's large wife, which kind of has Jean kind of, what? Saturnine, however, has approached Cable and says that she's tolerated the spying for long enough. But just after Cable tells Cyclops that they need to prepare for war because the Iraqi are going to invade. But then Saturnine cuts off the connection. Jean theorizes that perhaps working with Emma and the Cuckoos they could punch through together. Cyclops is of course mad as hell, he basically saying, he can't lose Nathan again. Jean kisses him and says, tell him, let's go fix this. The next fight is to be between Gorgon versus the White Sword, and it is to the death. The White Sword explains to Gorgon that Gorgon will face him after he makes it through the White Sword's swords, all 100 of them. Number 1 is dealt with swiftly with a decapitation. Number 2 and 3 are dealt with by having their lower legs cut off. 4 and 5 are petrified. Those 6 gouges out his eyes. And the rest are sent. And Gorgon simply says, "Come and die," and begins to wade through them. With Saturnine saying that by her count, Gorgon has slain 13 of the White Sword's champions, giving Krakoa a narrow lead of 19 to 18. Apparently, this was all part of the White Sword's plan. He basically wanted to have the mutants of Arakko grovel to him, so he makes his men, has his 100 swords, the remainder of his 100 swords back off, and says, "The White Sword stands before you, Gorgon. Your life is slipping away. In a moment it will all be over. When it is done, I will restore you, and you will serve me." Gorgon says that he walks his own path. The White Sword runs him through, saying, "Hey, I could impose my will." Gorgon says, "Not over him," and kills him. And Apocalypse simply says, "That is how a mutant dies," to Magic, Cable, and Doug, making the contest a tie, 19 to 19. Saturday Night begins a long speech about who's next, but Annihilation cuts her off, saying there's no need for Saturday Night's theatrics, with Apocalypse adding that they know what comes next. As the two stand, and he simply states it is a duel fated a millennia ago. We get a battle log, so we actually can find out what all happened. First off, we had Battle to First Kill, Isco the Unbeaten versus Captain Britain. Trial by Wedding, Bay the Bloodmoon versus Cypher. Arakko won for Battle to First Kill. Trial by Wedding, points to both. Contest of Arms, arm wrestling. Pog versus Magic, Arakko. Race to Death, Summoner versus Wolverine, Arakko. Contest of Cups, Storm versus Wolverine, Krakoa. Put in the score at 4-2. Amputation, Solon versus War, Arakko. Arakko wins, but putting the score at 5-2. Unarmed Combat, Pog versus Magic, Krakoa, putting the score at 5-3. Torture Endurance, War versus Cable, Captain Avalon, and Gorgon. Arakko wins. Contest of Boulders, Death, Isco the Unbeaten, Pog versus Magic. Arakko wins. Battle Beneath the Waves, Isco the Unbeaten and the White Sword versus Gorgon. Arakko. Contest of Plates, Redroot the Forest versus Cable, Captain Avalon, and Cypher. Krakoa. Lord of the Dance, Bay the Blood Moon and War versus Cypher and Wolverine. Arakko. Labyrinth Escape, Redroot the Forest and Pog versus Captain Avalon and Storm. Arakko. Jigsaw Battle, Death and War versus Gorgon and Magic. Krakoa won that one. Contest of Couture, Redroot the Forest and War versus Storm and Wolverine. Arakko won. Blight Spoke Navigation, Isco the Unbeatable versus Cable and Magic. Arakko won. Foot Race, Redroot the Forest versus Captain Avalon. Arakko. Contest of Letters, Bay the Blood Moon and Death and Pog versus Cypher and Magic. Arakko. Rumination Endurance, the White Sword versus Wolverine. Arakko won, as the White Sword did not look away. Resisting Temptation, Isco the Unbeaten and War versus Gorgon, Magic, and Wolverine. Arakko won. Kitten Killing, Captain Avalon versus War. Arakko apparently won. Drawing First Blood, Death versus Storm. Krakoa won. Battle to the Death, Bay the Blood Moon versus Cable. Arakko. 100-1, the White Sword versus Gorgon, points to both. Final challenge, Annihilation versus Apocalypse, with a score sitting at 19 to 19. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our next title, leaving the Contest of Swords for Juggernaut number 3. Where we left off, Juggernaut had gone after the Immortal Hulk, and the Immortal Hulk actually made a really good point talking to the Roxxon people who were tried to dupe Juggernaut into capturing him. Juggernaut has done has caused just as much damage as Hulk. The difference between the two, though, is that usually a lot of the damage that the Hulk did, especially years and years ago, Hulk wasn't in control. It's not like he really knew what the hell he was doing. But Juggernaut, all the damage he's done over the years, he knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah, he's right. So we begin. Juggernaut is on trial. First brought up is one of the first points we brought up is the fight between Juggernaut and Spider-Man. Apparently, his rampage across several city blocks created millions of dollars worth of damage. He wasn't being mind controlled. His actions were his own. His choices were his own. And Carmen Angelo, New York City born and bred, lost his scrappy construction company. However, Juggernaut's lawyer points out that opposing counsel just exonerated Juggernaut because it wasn't Juggernaut that released the inventory of cement of the plaintiff, which led to his bankruptcy, but rather it was Spider-Man, which trapped Juggernaut in a giant concrete block for months as a result. However, something has happened outside. But before we learn what happens outside, we go back. We have a flashback to months ago and learning the journey of how it was that Juggernaut got the gem back. And so he's in North Korea along a mountain pass. He finds the forge of Satorak. He enters, and the person working the forge, and he explains who Kane explains who he is. And also, explains that. But the Forge Master explains that for decades he's scoured, bartered, begged, and stolen mystic artifacts that could draw forth the Crimson Bands of Satorak, and even discovering the means to maintain their cohesion in this dimension. He did this so that Satorak would deem him worthy of serving as his host on Earth. And this is about that time that he goes after Kane with a hammer. But it flashes back to the present. Sand fills the courtroom. Rather aggressive, targeted sand, which D-Cell is able to slow down her deceleration waves. Turns out to be the villainous Quicksand. She's after D-Cell, apparently. So Juggernaut armors up, goes after D-Cell, or goes after Quicksand. And D-Cell does what she can to slow Quicksand down. And they learn that she's being mind controlled. So they suggest to Juggernaut they remove her head, which he does. They pull out the isotope that's controlling her, while D-Cell keeps her head from rejoining her body. Back in Korea months ago, the Forge Master at the Forge of Satorak is swinging his hammer at Kane and says, the bands are his and that he won't let Kane have them. However, as the fight wears on, the armor he's made falls and lands on Kane. And Kane rises and says, somebody asked, but what if Satorak wants me to have them? Now wearing the armor. And so doing some research into the isotopes being used to control Quicksand, turns out first off, the lawsuit is dropped. Explaining, with basically, Juggernaut provides some recompense to the owner of former owner of the construction company, and, you know, to replace the cement used on it. But it turns out that the isotope, technetium-99m, is most commonly employed, or is the most commonly employed radio element, but its use is tracked. The isotopes used to control quicksand were assigned to one facility, Absolution Solutions, who run for-profit prisons. And we learn who their director of research is. Arnim freaking Zola. Who is experimenting on superhuman prisoners. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our next book, Captain America number 25. Where we left off, the Daughters of Liberty strike team in Madripoor had apparently been captured by the Red Skull, once again inhabiting the body of Alexander Lukin, and Lukin's wife, Alexa Lukin. Also, Peggy Carter had been rejuvenated after a battle with... after Selene had been defeated. So we begin with a flashback to the Lukin estate in the Caucasus Mountains months ago. And it's explained that Alexa Lukin used to be a Daughter of Liberty, until she decided that power was more important than liberty. In Madripoor, the Red Skull, as well as his minions, Crossbones, Sin, some of the Watchdogs, have Peggy Carter, Thunderbolt Ross, Black Widow, and Misty Knight all held captive. As the Red Skull is particularly cruel, they do have some time. So, Falcon gets brought in to lend an impersonal touch to the situation because, well, Sharon is well aware that she would likely not be impersonal. So she does get to, through the grace of Sam Wilson, she gets to at least the vicarious ass kicking, she puts it. The power gets cut at the hotel, and in fact for a good chunk of Hightown. And at an airfield elsewhere in the city, Winter Soldier has blown up Madripoor's fledgling Air Force. And I do mean blown up their entire Air Force in one fell swoop. With Cap explaining that Madripoor is already a problem, but Madripoor, the Air Force, is a calamity. Especially when that Air Force is built on Lukin rubles. It turns out that, yes, Thunderbolt Ross was one of the power brokers that Alexa Lukin pulled together. However, he flipped. So Sharon's pretty sure that Alexa has something truly heinous planned for him. We get some background into the relationship between Peggy and Sharon. Red Skull and Alexa are informed of the destruction of the airfield. Sin suggests they go over the airfield and break some heads. However, Alexa explains that, well, that would be fun. That's exactly what their enemies want them to do. And yes, it is exactly what they want. Clear away the undercard. However, they don't do it. Sharon drops down out of their ship in her new armor, with Cap teleporting in. They enter the building, fend off some of the watchdogs. We learn more about the daughters. Apparently, Liberty Bell, or not Liberty Bell, Miss America, and I do not recall the speedster's name from the Invaders, but they were also apparently part of the team. Security at the airfield go after Winter Soldier. He makes short work of them. Cher makes a comment to herself that woman is always the best secret identity. Skull and the Lucans watch Cap doing his thing, and Alexa asks Peggy if Steve's as good as she remembers, and she simply says better. But Peggy gets loose, takes down Sin and Crossbones. In fact, takes down Crossbones with Sin, I might add. Bum rushes the chopper they're in. However, Alexa hits her with an energy blast as she tries to climb aboard, seemingly killing Peggy. We then got ourselves a backup story, unrelated to the main story. It's 25th issue, so we get a little extra content. In Red Hook, Brooklyn, at the Friscolanti funeral home, Cap shows up for the funeral of Sung Jin Jong. And it's explained that Cap met Sung Jin years ago. He's working for S.H.I.E.L.D. He was doing something for them that had gone badly. He wanted a hot meal before bed. It was before he'd gone public with his secret identity. He was trying to be incognito, but fatigue had made him sloppy, he explained. And so his uniform was kind of showing a bit from the overcoat he was wearing over it. But he asked, what can I get? What can I get on the menu at this time of night? And he was told anything he wants. So, steak and eggs. He got to know, and it turns out over the years he got to know Sung Yun. He was a lawyer in his home country. Trying to. He's trying basically, and also he kind of helps, reminds Cap that America is not black and white, but shades of gray. The land opportunity isn't the same for everyone. And but yeah, apparently, we hear, like, he talks about when he quit being Captain America, was just the captain for a while. He continued his friendship after the discovery of the Winter Soldier. Went to see him again after the whole thing with after the Secret Empire. And he was asked, why he still does it. He's given so much. Why keep doing it? And Cap says the smile on Sung Jin's face meant that he already knew what Steve was going to say, but he answered him anyway. And Cap explained that he doesn't fight for a country or a flag or a president. He fights for a dream. The Founding Fathers were imperfect men in an imperfect time, but the ideals that they set in place, the idea of America and all it can be, is worth fighting for. He fights for those who come here to build a better life, those who persevere despite a system that has been rigged against them, and he fights for those who struggle to change that system. He fights so people can worship how they want, love who they want, and be accepted for who they are. He fights because others can't. And it turns out that in the intervening years, Sung Jin did become a lawyer again, an immigration lawyer, in fact. And apparently most of the people there were people that he helped, with immigration issues. So, but he finishes his speech by saying that he never stopped fighting for the dream because people like Sung Jin never stopped fighting for the dream, and that's how he honors him, and he thinks that's how he'd want to be honored. And the story is entitled The Promise, but that is the end of The Promise is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our next book of the week, Spider-Woman, number 6. Where we left off, Spider-Woman and her newly discovered brother and newly discovered niece went to Wendigo Mountain, where they ran into Spider-Woman's surprisingly not dead mother. Actually, though it would turn out that, no, her mother is dead. It was a clone, and, well, the clone wanted to kill Jessica too, so par for the course, right? Anyway, but it turns out that High Evolutionary isn't on Earth. So, means she's got to go into space, which means calling up an old friend. However, the serum that has been developed to make Jessica, to help with Jessica's problems, is also making her increasingly unstable. Which is why they went to Wendigo Mountain in the first place, so yeah. The issue begins on an abandoned moon of counter-Earth far beyond Earth's orbit, which is the last location of the High Evolutionary, with Captain Marvel and Spider-Woman beating up various moon moles, while Spider-Woman does some narration as to, to bring everyone up to date. Carol is mad that Captain Marvel is mad that Spider-Woman wouldn't trust her about this, and Spider-Man points out that right now she can't trust herself to be there for Carol right now. So, while she appreciates that Carol wants, feels mad about not being trusted to be there for Jess, she has other things to worry about. And so, doing some reading, they figure out that the guy they're looking for is a guy named Sphinxor on Alpha Base in Scav City. Probably a nod to upcoming, or to the lead some of the things happening elsewhere in the the cosmic arm of the Marvel universe, when with one of the bar patrons explaining he hadn't heard of his family on Tentanons in days. While Captain Marvel suggests, diplomacy and talking things out, Spider-Woman goes more for the grab people and ask what a Sphinxer is. Eventually, doing things Spider-Woman's way, they do find him. And he does give them the information he wants. Which is, where's Counter-Earth? They find it. And the shuttle they borrow from Tony Stark gets shot down and destroyed as they arrive. They find a temple, dedicated to the High Evolutionary. The anthropomorphosed animals there basically take to worshiping Jessica almost immediately, referring to her as the Drew Spawn. Apparently, and it's explained that the High Evolutionary is banished for his own creations for no crimes of his own, but Captain Marvel interjects saying that's not exactly true, but yeah, the followers of High Evolutionary know who she is. But they manage to return him home. He wasn't pleased to see them, referring to them as his most disappointing experiments. They were never meant to be what they are, and he is not meant to be there, and so he left them. Hearing this, of course, makes Spider-Woman extremely mad, and, well, yeah. They do get a new ship, and the serum is Jessica's body got out of the serum again, and Captain Marvel told her, hey, you need to stop taking that. Look what it's doing to you. Tony Stark contacts them and says that they're needed on Avengers business, though he can't help but notice that it's not that. While he is talking to them, it's not his shuttle that they're on. So, upon returning to Earth, Jess storms off. and starts asking people about the Martian serum. Missing calls from Captain Marvel and texts as well, and later on a redacted and undisclosed location slightly off planet, looking for the High Evolutionary when, however, something pops up. And upon seeing it, Spider-Man realizes she should probably call Carol back. It's explained that the next few issues of Spider-Woman will be King in Black tie-ins. Because for, any reasons. Which brings us to our next title of the week, Symbiote Spider-Man, The King in Black, #1. So, we begin at Ravencroft Institute for the Criminally Insane. Alistair Smythe is visited by, seemingly, his father. It's explained that there's the entity that has taken the form of Alistair's father is a friend of Lewis Tuttle's. A friend who knew Lewis Tuttle, and he spoke very highly about Smythe, and Smythe realized, okay, so you need a new host. The creature states that the facility has quite a laboratory, and the same terms are most popular experiments on. He can gain Smythe access to it, make Smythe walk again. He needs to whip up a formula and inject himself. He'll give the creature will give the specifics, and then if you introduce it into the clinic's ventilation system. So, yeah. The Watcher is, watching when he is kidnapped by a spaceship. In New York City, a young boy accidentally lets go of his balloon and runs after it into traffic and is saved by Spider-Man. Though, when his mother asks who saved him, he claims it was Daredevil. At the Bugle, Jameson tells Parker to get with Ned Leeds. Alistair Smythe wants to talk. He wanted to see Jonah, but, Jonah sent Ned instead. So, back with the Uatu the Watcher, turns out the spaceship that kidnapped him was that of Kang the Conqueror. Turns out Kang's trying to actually save the universe for once. So he's going to use his ship to download all of Uatu's knowledge to that point. However, Uatu's psychic abilities allow him to interface with the AI of Kang's ship, and so he's absorbing all of the information from Kang's ship. Including an epic battle between darkness and light, beings he has never seen before, and now, somehow, he's seen the future. What Kang saw. And somehow what Kang saw sees Uatu. But, what's going on? What Uatu's doing does manage to short out some of the computers and destroy the ship. Kang is not happy about the destruction of his ship. In Ravencroft, one of the docs asks Smythe what he's doing, and he explains that he's experimenting. Unless he's volunteering to be a subject, but he's injected himself with something of his own creation, as he puts it. And a tank of it is pumping into the ventilation system, and it should be throughout the asylum by now. However, outside the asylum, Peter Parker spider sense tingles, and there's suddenly a solar eclipse, but there's not supposed to be one today. Eclipses aren't like tornadoes that just suddenly happen. And the Doctor goes kind of symbiotic, while Smythe rises and talks to her. Also, Ben's inside, and he also goes. Peter enters, turns his clothes into his costume, and fights the kind of symbiotized Ned Leeds. just as well as others, runs away from them to an elevator shaft. But apparently his spider sense is going nuts. He usually tells him what to keep away from him, but this time he feels he thinks this time he can use it as a guide. And he comes upon Smythe, who explains he's no longer Smythe, he is Mr. E. Which, yeah, Spider-Man doesn't even take remotely seriously. Face palms. And Mr. E sees Spider-Man and embraces him, calling him brother. Though now Mr. E asks, why would you hit me? We're on the same side. We both serve our God. But Spidey's having trouble now. However, Spidey's having trouble connecting with Mr. E. When he tries to punch him, his hand just goes right through him. So he stops and he thinks about it for a second, and when he hit Shadow Ned, he wasn't expecting it, and he wasn't thinking about it. He just did it. So in doing so, he does manage. He does at least somewhat manage to do some damage to Mr. E. When the Black Knight arrives and tosses the ebon blade into Mr. E's body. And he asks if Mr. E is responsible for the eclipse, before vanishing and leaving the ebon blade. So Spidey asks, now what? Though Black Knight's not sure. Hopefully the answer's out there somewhere. In space, another ship has arrived and picks up Kang. The ship is the Rack and Ruin 2. The captain and crew is totally not a raccoon by the name of Rocket. And he's got a gun on Kang asking who the hell Kang is. Which is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our next book and the final comic for this video. Venom number 30, the finale of Venom Beyond. Where we left off, Venom and Eddie Brock and his son Dylan were trapped on a different Earth, as was Mac Gargan the Scorpion, having taken on yet another identity, Virus, wearing a combination of Stark Tech and Osborn Tech. Yeah, that works out. And it turns out that the Earth that the three are on is ruled by an entity known as Codex. Codex, it turns out, is a grown-up and kind of psychotic version of Dylan Brock. And also on this Earth, Eddie is dead. However, Anne Weying, his wife, is not. So this Earth now has an official number, 1051. The symbiote that's been force bonded to Mac Gargan is destroyed somehow. Meanwhile, Dr. Octopus explains that he may have actually discovered interdimensional travel by going through the armor by investigating the suit of the virus suit, basically. Has environment scanning technology, and once rebuilt, he was able to ascertain how Eddie, Dylan, and Mac arrived on their Earth. So a gate was built. Now he has the gate schematics for a door to other worlds. So Codex asks, "Can you build it?" With the specification of a few more symbiote engineers to help, a week or two tops. With the Resistance, they're working on a plan. The plan is get the virus suit, have Reed build the gateway. It should take about 4, maybe 5 years tops, with limited resources at hand. But that night, Dylan goes to visit Anne. They talk. He explains he's, I'm Dylan Brock, but I'm not your Dylan Brock. And he notices that she notices that when Dylan touches her symbiote, nothing happens. And he kind of figures nothing happens when he touches his dad, so But he explains that hey, you lost your son. Well, on my earth, I lost you when I was a baby. At least you've got memories of the things you lost, and you guys have everything I heard. So, but yeah, they get to be mother and son for a minute. Then Anne goes to see Eddie. They've got a plan. They're going to win. But they use the Fantastic Car as a... they pilot the Fantastic Car into Kodak's stronghold. Troops go after Codex. He calls forth his venomized Avengers. Eddie uses his symbiote to take control of Codex. However, then Gargan betrays everyone, grabs his armor once again, and Reed Richards manages to take him down with an EMP weapon. Then Dylan from Earth 616 meets Dylan of Earth 1081. It is 1081, right? Yeah, 1051. They basically get to share each other's memories. And meaning they both kind of get to combine things, so that they now have memories of, so now 616 Dylan has memories of, growing up with his mom and Eddie, while Codex has memories of his dad and his mom. But he manages to, because of Dylan ends up going into a coma, and basically he releases his grip on the world. Eddie and Dylan stay on this earth for another year. Eddie gets a new hand. Apparently the new hand still tickles a little. But they're enjoying the moment. Apparently Eddie has been trying to get Anne to come with him. But she can't, her Dylan hasn't woken up yet, and when he does, she wants to be there waiting for him. So, and so sounds like they've got their own messes on his world. But she liked when he told Scorpion to get the hell away from his wife. So they hug, they kiss, they say goodbye, and Dylan and Eddie step through the gateway, ending up back on Earth 616, and Dylan asks if they're home, and Eddie looks up and says, "Yeah, we're home," but they look up and the sky is pitch black. And Eddie asks, "Where did all the stars go?" And that is where the issue ends. And that's it for this installment of the Roundup. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.